So, I think it's best to start at the end of the previous season, the 2014-15 campaign, as West Ham finished in 12th place but ended the season on a run of 1 win in 8 games. 12th place doesn't seem too shabby for a side that were only promoted back to the top flight 3 years prior, but the West Ham fans became frustrated with the style of football they were watching. At the helm was Sam Allardyce, a coach who had worked in the game for decades, guiding West Ham from the Championship to consistent mid-table finishes in the Premier League. Big Sam had done a good job with the Hammers, managing to get under the skin of some of the Premier League's top managers at the time.
This is football from the 19th century.
He can't take it, can he? He can't take it, he just can't take it because we've out-tacticked him, we've outwitted him. You know what I mean? He just can't cope. He can tell me all he wants, I don't give a
The media gave him credit for his work, but the fans were still craving a manager who looked to play football in the West Ham way, something Allardyce wasn't aligned with.
Never been a place where I've won and got booed. You know, whether they like what they're seeing or not, they've got to stay behind the team and they've got to help them win.
The West Ham way, that was the thing, wasn't it? That was perhaps sometimes levelled at you. What did you feel about that?
Well, I still don't know quite what the West Ham way get is. I always thought that playing attractive football and winning. But the winning is the first priority, we all know that.
In May 2015, West Ham parted company with Sam Allardyce, saying in the statement, "I didn't want to stay. I suppose you could say it was a mutual agreement if they didn't want me to stay either." Co-owners David Gold and David Sullivan added, "He leaves the club in a truly better state than when he arrived, and for that, the board are truly grateful." It was true that Allardyce had improved West Ham, but the board were now tasked with finding a manager who could make the East Londoners more easy on the eye. A bit like their switch from David Moyes to Julian Lopetegui this season, but in 2015, Gold, Southern and Brady opted for Super Slav. West Ham appointed former Hammers defender Slaven Bilić as manager on a 3-year contract. The Croatian had played in the Premier League for 3 years with both West Ham and Everton, but this was his first managerial role in England. Bilic's last job was at Turkish giants Besiktas, but failed to win the league title during his 2 years in Istanbul. His best spell as manager came with the Croatian national team, where his team would beat England twice, home and away, in Euro 2008 qualifying. His 6-year tenure was celebrated in Croatia, helping to nurture talents such as Luka Modric, Ivan Rakitic, Ivica Olic, Mario Mandzukic and Ivan Perisic, all of whom would feature for Croatia in the World Cup final later in the decade. It was a big season ahead for West Ham, playing their final season at the Boleyn Ground before moving to the Olympic Stadium. In his first statement, Bilić said, "It is a big privilege and a big responsibility to now be manager, and I hope that I will prove it to the board, players and fans." When I spoke to the chairman and Karen Brady, they made it clear that it's not only the new fantastic stadium that we are moving into, but they showed their determination and ambition to make what is a big club even bigger. So, to make West Ham massive as their fans like to sing, Bilić and the board brought in plenty of new recruits. 14 players made the move to East London in the summer, with notable signings including Juventus defender Angelo Ogbonna, Chelsea winger Victor Moses on loan, Alex Song returning for a second spell on loan from Barcelona, Darren Randolph and Mikel Antonio from Championship clubs, and a certain Dimitri Payet. With plenty of players making the move, Bilić, flanked by a coaching staff including fan favourite Julian Dix and a 32-year-old protege Edin Terzic, set about transforming the fortunes of West Ham, beginning with Europa League qualifying. West Ham were granted a place in the Europa League qualifying because England were given an extra qualification berth as one of the top 3 associations in UEFA Respect Fair Play ranking, and West Ham finished top of the Premier League Fair Play table. Easy for me to say. What should have been a routine qualifying campaign turned into a disaster as the Hammers breezed past Andorran side Lustianios, narrowly progressed on penalties against Mulsea's outfit Bicaracara, but lost over 2 legs to Romanian team Astra Grigu. Comically, lightning would strike twice the following season, with West Ham losing to Astra in Europa League qualifying again, prompting this viral clip.
"We couldn't score against Astra fucking Go-Go! It's not acceptable!"
But back to 2015, and West Ham's regular pre-season wasn't faring much better, only winning 2 out of 6 games. There was trepidation about the upcoming season, with West Ham's tough start including trips to Arsenal, Liverpool and Man City within their opening 6 games. Fans are holding their breath, with Bilic's first Premier League game coming against Arsenal, with Arsene Wenger taking charge of his 20th season for the Gunners. The odds were against West Ham in a new beginning, so how would they start? The answer was pretty well. A clanger from a debut in Petr Cech gifted Cheku Kouyaté a goal, and Mauro Zarate doubled the Hammers' advantage, a lead they would protect to leave the Emirates with all 3 points. However, a standout performance wouldn't come in the goal scorers or any of the new signings, but a 16-year-old Reece Oxford. Touted for big things, Oxford became West Ham's youngest ever Premier League player and second youngest Premier League starter of all time. Speaking after the game, Bilić said, "People were asking, how are you sure he's only 16? Only on paper he is 16. He is a part of this new generation. Put it this way, if Lionel Messi was in front of me, I'd be more fazed than Reece." As so often happens, Oxford was the name on everyone's lips as England's next big thing, but he would only make 8 more appearances for West Ham, 7 coming in this season. Since coming through the ranks at West Ham, Oxford has endured multiple recurring injuries and suffered from long COVID during the coronavirus pandemic. Oxford now plays his football in Germany, and my best wishes go out to him in his recovery. Back-to-back home losses followed this result, falling 2-1 to eventual champions Leicester City and 4-3 to newly promoted Bournemouth. Despite winning at Arsenal, the Hammers' home form placed them as heavy underdogs against Liverpool at Anfield on matchday 4, but once more, West Ham defied the odds. West Ham romped to a first league win at Anfield since 1963, scoring 3 without reply in what BBC Sport writer Phil Dawkes described as a masterclass of counter-attacking football. The star player in this match was a debuting Manuel Lanzini, who had made 226 appearances over 9 years at the club. As Bilić framed it in simple terms, we parked the bus but left the handbrake off. 2 weeks later came the tough test of Manchester City, who could have moved 6 points clear at the top of the Premier League with a win. Instead, West Ham pulled off another masterclass. Defensively, they held firm, withstanding huge amounts of Man City pressure to win 2-1. The statistics showcase dominance from future West Ham manager Manuel Pellegrini, but Bilić would once again mastermind a shock result against the table toppers, with a lot of plaudits going to centre-back Winston Reid. On Match of the Day, commentator Steve Wilson labelled Reid's performances as one of the best individual defensive displays he'd ever seen. Reid made 30 appearances for West Ham in the season, and 222 in total over a 10-year span, scoring some significant goals, one of which we'll get onto later. West Ham are flying high, 3rd place after their win against Manchester City, and in October they staged a Premier League classic at Upton Park. London rivals Chelsea came to town, and in a game full of flashpoints, the hosts won 2-1, with Andy Carroll scoring the winner for his first goal since January. Nemanja Matic, Jose Mourinho and Silvino Loro were all sent off, and Chelsea were enduring their worst ever start to a Premier League season, while West Ham were enjoying their best. This resurgence under Bilić saw wins against 4 of England's top 6 on the first 2 months of the season. However, West Ham would only win 1 more league game in 2015, which was a 2-1 win against Southampton in December. There were a lot of draws in this run, which meant the Irons were still picking up points, ending 2015 in 7th place. 2016 would be a real test, but there were some already positive signs more than negatives, with West Ham fans dreaming of European football next season. The first game of 2016 would see West Ham win 2-0 against Liverpool, completing their first league double over the Reds in 52 years. Mikel Antonio and former Liverpool record signing Andy Carroll got the goals for West Ham, who would also knock out Liverpool on the FA Cup later that season. West Ham hadn't lost at home since August, and bolstered their ranks by signing promising right-back Sam Byram from Leeds and FIFA legend Emmanuel Emenike. Speaking of FIFA legends, the Zarate kid Mauro Zarate would depart for Fiorentina, but the Hammers maintained hope that a top 6 finish was still achievable. More derby delight came in March as West Ham beat title-chasing Tottenham 1-0. An early goal from Antonio secured all 3 points, with Bilić bullish about his team's performance after the game. Maybe I'm biased, but they should be more happy with the result than us, because it could have been more. In all aspects of football we were magnificent, and I congratulate the players. This result was followed up by a 3-2 victory against Everton, leaving the Londoners in 5th place on what was already turning out to be a truly unpredictable season, and probably my personal favourite. The run-in saw West Ham continue to be a difficult side to beat, but they weren't winning many games as required. 3 consecutive draws against London opposition saw plenty of drama, with a contentious late penalty decision denying them all 3 points against Chelsea, a wonder strike from Payet highlighted in a 2-2 draw against Crystal Palace, and a 7-minute Andy Carroll hat-trick only enough for a point in a 3-3 draw against Arsenal. West Ham saw their Champions League hopes fade, and one player from their ranks continued to impress and showcase that he himself was Champions League level. Individual brilliance and a skill set not seen since the days of Paolo Di Canio, the genius that was Dimitri Payet. These figures were brilliant, integral to the success of West Ham during the season, and at the point of the Crystal Palace game, Payet had scored 12 goals and he'd also been directly involved in 23 goals in all competitions, 13 more than any other West Ham player. A player the West Ham fans adored and the epitome of what West Ham needed to reach the next level. He would also be named in the PFA Team of the Year and feature regularly for France in Euro 2016, and when Payet scored in the tournament, it prompted this reaction in the ITV studio from his manager.
The French loved it, and his club manager loved it as well. And luckily here at ITV...
Payet spearheaded their European charge, and they were also going well in the FA Cup, looking for a first Wembley appearance in 4 years. Upton Park hosted a 6th round replay against Manchester United, and the Red Devils would win 2-1, helped largely by the performances of an 18-year-old Marcus Rashford. It was heartbreak, with the Boleyn farewell right around the corner. The team looked to set themselves up well with wins against Watford and West Brom, but crumbled against Swansea in their penultimate home game, losing 4-1 in what was probably their worst performance of the season. The final ever league game at the Boleyn, West Ham had the opportunity to get revenge on the team that knocked them out of the FA Cup, Manchester United.
Guys!
It was a hostile atmosphere before the game, as objects were launched at the opposition team bus, forcing the kick-off to be delayed. When the game started, West Ham took an early lead through Diafra Sakho, but Anthony Martial put United in control in the second half. But in the final 15 minutes, West Ham completed a memorable comeback, as Antonio and then Reed restored West Ham's lead.
Payet's free kick met by Winston Reed, and West Ham had their victory. A first over United in 15 attempts, and what a way to bow out at the Bilić.
They won the game 3-2, and BBC Sport gave man of the match to Mark Noble, Mr West Ham, with BBC Sport writer Phil McNulty writing, "Mark Noble has ensured his teammates' heads did not drop after Manchester United took the lead and helped to spark a memorable comeback, a captain's performance." So the perfect farewell was completed, and West Ham ended their season in 7th place, earning a spot in the Europa League qualifying round. A great West Ham team, full of fan favourites and character, with a bit of individual brilliance sprinkled on top. Bilić had guided West Ham to their best Premier League points tally at the time on 62 points, a great foundation to build on at their new stadium, and it would all go to plan. Right?
Why are you leaving early? Why are you leaving early? Why are you leaving early? Because I'm going to carry back on a train, not a Rolls Royce, not a Rolls Royce or a plane. We're fans.
An increasing number of West Ham United supporters massing in front of the director's box. I'm not sure I've ever seen anything quite like this. Now there's another supporter who's decided to take matters into his own hands. That really isn't helping.